Hi, Indigo. I'm so glad to
Hi.
be talking with you again. I loved our first interview, and yeah, the people want more. So we're here and we're hanging. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? I'm doing great.
Yeah, I'm doing great too. We're just getting ready for our Giving Tuesday Change the Frequency campaign, and your shirt's on the way. I'm excited to see what you do with it
I'm
because I love
so
your
excited.
style.
I've been thinking about tie-dyeing it. Maybe. Maybe.
Yeah. So the cool thing about these shirts is every one of them gets individualized. So like I did this little number with mine, and then there's like the same down at the bottom, and it
Nice.
just shows the personality. So each one of them end up being like one of a kind. And when we bring them to market, we buy them whole, and then we have our cicadas design them, and then we sell them to the public. So if you want more shirts, I can throw some in there for you to
Love
design.
that.
Yes. Indigo exclusive. You heard it here live and first. You can order it when you contribute to our Change the Frequency fundraiser. So speaking of that, let's just talk about like why we're here, right? So Cicada is brand new nonprofit. This is our first giving campaign. We chose to do it when there's a lot of competition between other really great service organizations. Every nonprofit, hopefully any good nonprofit, is serving someone who needs help. So it's really hard to think, who should I really fully support? And everybody has different strategies. Some people 25 bucks here, 25 bucks there and get them all. Some people are like, let me focus on something. And really the purpose of our chatting is like, we want those sustaining donors. We want people to say, hey, what is this real life Hogwarts I'm hearing about? What is this think tank of spiritually gifted youth and paradigm shifters? I've never heard of this before. And there's no real way to explain the experience except for to have the experience, right? It's a very ecological system, but you have. And so let's just start there.
Okay.
Tell me how you found out that the Cicada Institute was right for you. What was the moment where you're like, yep, I'm in the right place?
It was after one of our first classes. I knew the minute I walked out of that class, I felt different. I may have went in and came out with the same emotions and the same mentality that day, but I knew that there was something different, like something in me shifted. There was some sort of change that I wanted to continue discovering and continue developing.
And now that you've taken a variety of our classes, I've had you drawing and dancing and singing and yelling, right? We do some funky, cool stuff here, and plants and crystals and cool
Yes.
stuff, right? We've been working our magic together for a year. What do you feel is the culmination of all these classes? How do you feel now compared to when you started?
I feel like a brand new person. I genuinely feel like the trauma that's there doesn't go away. But now, when the triggers come up, I can actually function a lot better. I can take time to use one of the resources that I was given to help me cope with everything. From before, I didn't really have coping mechanisms. I only used what I had to survive growing up and do the best with what I knew. But now my knowledge has expanded. It's broadened a lot being in these classes. And now I have so many different coping mechanisms that help me face the challenges of my everyday life. The other day I was at work and we got rushed out of nowhere. Our lunch rush came in, and truthfully that day I didn't know how to handle it. Normally I'm pretty well under pressure, but that day I just could not handle it. I was overwhelmed. I looked up and I had two people, and then it turned into 15, and then it turned into 30, and I didn't know what to do. I was all over the place and I was overwhelmed. And usually I don't necessarily need my manager giving me directive during a rush because I'm already set, I'm focused, and I know what to do. But that day I was just 100% lost. I did not know what to do. I was overwhelmed. And after the rush, I knew that I needed to take a moment to reconnect with myself, go deeper within, figure out the root, and get to the bottom of why I was so anxious. And it came down to just a dream I had the other night that triggered me, that carried over into the next day. And I decided to go outside, take the trash out, and take a moment while I was there to just breathe and get back to me and get back to a more regulated nervous system.
So let's share for people who haven't been to Cicada. I'm assuming you're talking about the go outside and pick three things strategy with the box breathing. So before I explain it, just say a little bit about what you did, how you remembered, okay, I need to get outside of this box and into the big wide open for my big wide feelings, and what you did when you were taking the trash out.
Well, I kind of just stepped outside and walked towards the trash bin. But once I got to the trash bin, I took my time to take the boxes apart, like physical boxes. I took them apart, and as I was doing it, I began venting about what was going on within. And anytime I felt like something was a bit more difficult for me to say and it wasn't necessarily authentic, I took a moment and I paused and I reflected on that. And then I went back upon the reflection and I would like allow myself to feel whatever was coming through, and I'd look around me for a second to ground myself in that. So there was a phone number on the trash can that I had used to just look at and read, give myself a focal point. There was some trees across the street. There were people walking by, and there was a car that was parked. You know, I took the time to just really ground myself in what was surrounding me rather than what was going on within me.
And you were also expressing, right? Because I'm sure those boxes got a what for, right? I'm sure those boxes really, they got into that recycle bin. All right, you know, so that's the magic of what we can't explain. You're both moving the energy of that fight, flight, freeze. You had a freeze, like overwhelm, triggered, no longer able to function.
Right.
You weren't ahead of the 8 ball yet. You couldn't have stopped and done your box breath there yet, although we'll work on that, right? But you did say afterwards, I'm not taking this home with me. Right. I know that this is not about the rush, and I know that I'm healing, so this one doesn't get put in my backpack of trauma. This one goes before I get home. So I love that you took out the trash. Like you literally, even though you didn't realize that, and that for me to our donors is the beauty of these cicadas, these, when I say emotionally gifted and spiritually talented, like they don't even know that they're doing these levels of regulation. And it's for them like, yeah, I can take out the trash. That's easy. It's accessible. I can excuse myself, right? These aren't modalities where most wilderness therapy, you have to go away for a long time. You have to have a lot of money for all the gear and all the stuff. These are like little things you can put in your pocket right where you are. We don't even live in the same place, right? But we're still connected in that moment. Like there's that container, and you kept doing this as you were telling the story and making a container. You didn't realize it, but you're like, and then outside, I was like looking at this phone number and this tree, and then, you know, like allowing myself to come back to the moment. So that's the container of safety. Whereas before we'd just be like, oh my gosh, work was crazy. Any one of us, not just you, you know, and stay in that trigger, blah, 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 I'm scattered, I can't focus. Instead, you're like, outside is my container. I feel safe here. Wilderness therapy. And then inside, I'm moving this energy. I'm physically smashing these boxes, and that feels safe to me. I can do it in public. Nobody knows what I'm doing here. It looks like I'm just doing recycling, but I'm able to be like, oh, stress release, right?
Yes, I believe now that after being in the Cicada Institute for a year, that from before, me being able to handle those triggers were a lot different. It came down to breakdowns. It came down to me leaving work, being sent home from work just because I couldn't focus, just because I wasn't doing my job well, to now being able to function, still being able to function at work, and being able to come back to the person that I am authentically, rather than who my trigger will tell me that who my trigger says I am.
Your
It's not.
trauma response.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fancy word for the donors who are interested is we do attachment trauma-based interventions using depth and transpersonal psychology, which is like wilderness therapy. All that fanciness is my fun summer camp teacher things are specifically trauma-informed care. We can't be ourselves because we're surviving. And until we're safe and we're loved and we belong, we can't know who we are. We just can't. But
Right.
now that you've had a year, and just for those who don't know, it's a 4-year program. It's an alternative high school. Think Hogwarts, think Harry Potter. So this is the 101. Our 101 first year metric is empowerment. Because people who are especially systematically oppressed and marginalized from lots of places have generational trauma, right? So we're not even working with just your own backpack, which is full. We're working with your ancestors' backpacks as well, right? That show up every day in ways that you really, really feel in your DNA, and everybody else dismisses as like, I didn't get that from that experience. I don't know what you're talking about. So then you're like, what do I do with that? Like that hurts me.
Associated from it and just suppress it. And it's been very, very unhealthy thing to grow up around. And now I'm creating an entirely new generation.
Yeah, and we all are, right? So like it's that empowerment that's crucial, because your voice is the voice of your ancestors. Your voice is the voice of your future, and you are the ancestor in which is speaking forth that truth into the future. And you can't have that light shine until you have that container of safety. Like, absolutely, we're looking out for you. Go ahead, do your thing. So let's talk about that, because we just now at the end of the year of empowerment, and I'm personally excited because it's the first time you've spoken it. Let's talk about what your thing is and what some of the realizations you've had of like, yeah, this may be something I'm into for myself personally. What are your life goals?
Definitely, I'm definitely feeling empowered. Trust me. Life goals. Yikes. To be very honest with you, I haven't sat down and thought about life goals. I just know that for me, with the trauma that I've dealt with, I want to ensure that I'm on a platform where I can have an outreach of more than 5 people at a time.
Mhm.
And I understand it begins with starting small, but I definitely want to get out there and let people know that you're not alone in this. And not only are you not alone in this, that there are other people who are out here that are willing to help you and that are willing to listen to you, that are willing to hear what you have to say, that are willing to hear your story, that are willing to help you find resources and help you to walk through whatever you're going through. Most people, when you come with a bag or you come with a pack with you, like packaging, they're like, I don't want this, and you're discarded. And they're just like, this isn't for me, and it's not my job and not my responsibility to do this and to take care of you. And they fail to realize that this person is doing the best they can to take care of themselves. They're not asking you to take care of them. They're just asking you to simply be there. And most people will turn away, and then it creates an entire rejection mood, abandonment, and it just creates
Furthers the trauma significantly.
entire downfall. It does. So
I'm worthless. Nobody cares about me. I'm pleading for help. I'm pleading for attention and affection. I'm trying to overcome this oppression, and
exactly.
you're treating me like trash.
Exactly. And it took me through the 1 year and the 4 months of isolation that I did have. It took those 4 months plus this entire year for me to just finally begin to see that it's really different, that I'm creating my own reality, that I'm gotta go with the flow, right? I'm creating my own reality, and that I'm not a victim to circumstance at any point in
We
time.
are a survivor. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
You're fine. Um, Continue.
This is kind of what we said in our first video, right? We are a survivor of that initiation for a purpose. Our pain was not without purpose, right? And that's what I love that you kind of didn't have anything prepared, and you exactly said what I'm trying to convey to donors who don't have, probably never lived your life, never will live the life of many, many, many of our participants in our program, to understand what that worthless, it makes me emotional to know what that feels like, and to be so desperate, like somebody, anybody, I'll do the work. And let me tell you, you do the work. You do, like, I give you like a little snack and you're like, I came back with a meal, it's a casserole, like, and so do all the rest of my cicadas. You're not your trauma because you did that work. I empowered you, but you shone your own light, right? And what I was alluding to, and I know you didn't say you're not committed to what you're doing when you're grown. And for me, that's a sign of a healthy person, because you're accepting the unknown and you're comfortable sitting in that unknown, because you're comfortable sitting with yourself and your own purpose and being led, which when we're in trauma, all we want to do is control, because we're in survival. What's going to keep me safe? What's going to keep me safe? What's going to keep me safe? So the fact that we have any level of trust, whether it's in the divine and nature and ourselves and our practices and our whatever it is, shows that we're moving out of that fight, flight, freeze into some level of stability, right? And so we loop this. And you mentioned motivational speaking, which I thought was so amazing, because you were so resistant to the idea of that level of vulnerability, because you had come from that trauma place, which is appropriate. But you and I dialogued a lot about like being here, having these conversations. How are we feeling about it? I was really hesitant to ever put a face to what we do, because it's so sacred to me and each person's journey. But like, you wanted to show up, you wanted to be this vocal point. I think I asked you like 7 different times if it was okay with you,
Yeah, and I want to be there for people. I want to be, if anything, a voice that people can hear, and instead of it scaring them even more, it brings some sort of calmness, like tranquility to their mind or to their heart, knowing that everything is going to be okay. Life may not pan out the way you want it to, but it'll be okay. And it's
And
all baby steps. It's a journey, it's a process. It's never immediate. It's never, all I have to do is jump the gate and I'm there. No, you're walking the yellow brick road.
yeah, and our motto is change the frequency, because that's what we're talking about. There's a vibrational level of trauma that's inauthentic, because we're each in our own fight, flight, freeze cage, and we want to connect and we want to have these powerful relationships and this potent self-actualization, but we're scared little rabbits and we fritz out, right? And then the step by step, there's a reason it's a curriculum and it's a school and it's 4 years and it's wilderness therapy. There's a method to this madness, like there is with Waldorf or Montessori, or from a therapeutic standpoint. But the structural support of like, I can just have this workshop, I have these things that I add to my bag, but I also have this future of like, I know if I keep going to these programs, I can become even more powerful, even more self-actualized, even more resourced, even more belonging in community, right? And I think I'm going to just speak nerdy for a second. Really at the heart of everything is developmental psychology and attachment, because none of us can control what happened in the past, especially between birth and age 8. But there are certain modalities of healing that can make up for 30 years or 10 years of really bad stuff in 4 years. and sometimes even in half a year. And that's why it's so important to fund these kinds of programs. So I'm glad that wasn't my words, and that you kind of showed that, like, there's how many more people your age do you think are like out there and could benefit from this programming?
More than thousands of people, millions of people, honestly, because growing up, in looking back, growing up in middle school, growing up in high school, the friends that I came across, even people in my workplace today, the fact that I'm going through these programs, I'm able to be a lot more introspective, and with the introspectiveness, I'm able to look outward as well and see into other people. I can say right now, more than 5 people at my job would benefit from this resource, but they aren't even aware of it yet. And we have a team of 13 people at
Yeah.
the moment. So
There's a lot of humans that wouldn't necessarily have access nor desire to walk into a therapist office and say, okay, help me work on my issue. Nor is it helpful if we have attachment trauma. It's not helpful to do one-on-one, because all humans will fail you. Every human is a human. We all, I think I lost her.